issues. We are now back in open session. The first thing I need is approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
And Jack, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, I need approval of the agenda. Any additions?
As written this evening.
So moved.
Mark?
Second.
Peggy? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So this evening, we can take public comments on anything. Every board meeting, you're able to come and speak on agenda items, but 4 times a year, we allow the public to come and speak to us about any items. And I have 2 people here tonight that would like to address the board, starting with John Gunderson. Welcome.
Absolutely.
Please.
Yep. Yep.
Is it on?
It's all good, yes.
Okay. Thank you for hearing me today. My name is John Gunderson. I live in Savannah Village. I moved into Waunakee in the summer. I have three young daughters, and the topic that I'd like to discuss with you today is access to instructional education time in the school. As a matter of capacity, as we moved into Savannah Village, the assumption that my daughter would attend the first grade in Arboretum was made. She was forced to attend Heritage instead. As part of that, there's a transportation choice relative to shuttle busing. I would like to point out that that particular transportation choice takes away approximately 8 days of instruction by virtue of eliminating 15 minutes a day for 180 days. Ends up being about 7.8 instructional days, if you do the math. 1050 divided by 180. My feeling is that aside from the just preference to have my daughter attend school with her friends and peers in the neighborhood, I feel like she should have the same access and educational time as her peers. By virtue of moving into Waunakee and being new, she's forced to a new school location, so she'll not have that benefit of being in the same school as her friends in the neighborhood. I can accept that as a matter of policy. I think there's an opportunity to do a better job in planning capacity and boundaries for the elementary school, but at a basic level, while those things take time, the immediate choice can be made. I was reading through the standards, and in the 300 series of Waunakee School Board policies, number 2 is that teaching time and class time is the primary objective above all else, all other activities. In my experience, the choice has been made to minimize transportation costs at the expense of educational time, and specific to my case. I have the feeling that I pay for, via taxes and support of the public school system, equal right and access to education as everybody else in my neighborhood, and that hasn't been the result. So I would ask that you review, as and when appropriate, the policy relative to reducing instruction time for children forced to go to schools outside their assigned boundaries.
I'm confused on how she's losing the instruction time, but the busing
Okay.
thing gets her there late?
Sure, yeah, no, actually what happens is, at the end of the day, whether she's in library or language class or whatever it may be, the bell rings and she leaves school 15 minutes earlier than everybody else. So the type of impact, taking away from the numbers on a more personal side, she gets to library class, she's the only one in her class, has to leave. She doesn't have the time to get the books, take the books out, go to her class at the end of the day, get the benefit of the day's wrap up, the plan for tomorrow. And she's 6 years old, so she has a hard time understanding why she's singled out in that condition. And we've been unable to find other people in the neighborhood in the same situation that could either kind of mentor, steward older children in the same scenario. So it makes it tough, and for somebody that just moved into the neighborhood, it's a little bit tougher. I think from the angle of fair access to education, she should have the same benefit as everybody else. I mean, as of right now, my wife and I arranged to pick her up directly from school, so that doesn't happen. I don't know that that should be the only way to have her in school with her classmates for the full day. I think if, for instance, I called the school district and said, it'd be a lot more convenient for me to come and drop my daughter off 15 minutes late every day, I think there'd be an issue. I think if it was more convenient from a transportation perspective to just not send her to school for 8 days, that would probably be a problem as well. I personally have spent a lot of time in school. I believe in the value of school and education, so we make the choice to pick her up at the end of the day and have her stay in school. I would just ask that we got a lot of very intelligent people, and operational planning is not, it's not all that complicated. So I would say that the next opportunity we get to look at those assignments, boundaries, and choices relative to transportation and cost, we follow the policy and put the educational time and the instruction time first. That's my ask, really.
Just to clarify, I mean, I appreciate you being here tonight, Mr. Gunderson, and you and I had a good conversation on the phone to try and talk through this. So the situation that Mr. Gunderson finds himself in is living in the Arboretum attendance area, our class size there being over the capacity, so then we are moving his child to Heritage. So the way our system works in that situation is the child then goes to Arboretum in the morning to catch a shuttle bus that then takes them to Heritage. And the issue that Mr. Gunderson's bringing up is then on the return home is that the children, our dismissal at the elementary is at 2:40. The bus leaves Heritage at 2:32. And so the shuttle bus then at 2:32 transports the children back to Arboretum, and then they get off the bus there and they go home, and then that bus that is now at Heritage or at Arboretum then picks up the other children. So there is a decision that is made as far as our policy that does dismiss those children a bit early to catch the shuttle bus to go back to their neighborhood school. That's the issue Mr. Gunderson's talking.
Mark?
How many students at Heritage are shuttled to Arboretum at present?
I think right now we're at about 20 in the different grades. I don't have that specifically, but I think it's around that.
But yeah, of particular interest to me was that relative to boundaries, there's people outside of, there's students in the history you would know better than me, but there's children outside of the boundaries of that school being bused in and vice versa. So relative to transportation costs, and at least in business operations, when you do more transportation, it costs more money. In this scenario, minimizing cost for transportation while inherently producing more of it is hard to understand reducing or optimizing cost in that scenario.
If we have 20 students on a bus, wouldn't that be a sufficient number to directly return them to their, not to Arboretum, but to their residence in the Savannah area?
The way our bus system works right now, the shuttle system is a relatively static cost because we have the shuttles go between all the schools. You're correct. We do have shuttles that go to all of the elementaries. But whether I have one child or 50 children, it's still one bus going in that direction. So one of the pieces that Steve and I've talked about was, okay, if you didn't have a shuttle system and we did more of a neighborhood pickup for these, it's going to be multiple bus routes. The bus route is approximately $35,000. So you're increasing your transportation costs to create a different model than what we have. The model that we have, as I shared with Mr. Gunderson, is a busing efficiency model, and as opposed to And I think the decisions that we've had over time have been trying to maximize our dollars into our classrooms and our schools. It hasn't necessarily been to create the highest level of busing transportation. So the shuttle piece is a relatively static cost because we don't have enough kids that precipitate us adding more buses as we shuttle more students. So if you go back over time, we used to shuttle a lot more kids out of the Arboretum area than we do now. That cost wasn't any different than what we have currently.
So to help me understand, of those 20 students who are shuttling back to Arboretum approximately, they could end up, some of them could be walking home once they get to Arboretum, some could be busing
Correct.
3-4 different
Different
buses.
places.
Correct.
Because of where the
They-
residence originates.
Think
Yeah.
of the neighborhood school as the hub.
Right.
So
got
they're
it.
either gonna arrive back at their neighborhood school and then they're gonna walk home, or they're gonna get on another bus that's gonna transport them home if they're eligible for busing. Correct.
Yeah, one nuance of that policy is that in the board's policies for transportation, the idea that a bus will be within a half of a mile, bus stop will be within a half a mile of your house is also in some weird sort of way X'd out of here, because I happen to be more than a half a mile from Arboretum Elementary, but within a 1 mile radius where no buses run. So, and I personally am not gonna have my 6-year-old daughter walk 3/4 of a mile at 7 o'clock in the morning to catch a bus to another school. I mean, it's just, I guess my challenge to the board is, this is a problem that's solvable, and if the opportunity presents itself, I would either offer my direct involvement, support, or whatever I can do to solve the problem, because it's not a matter of math, science, or technology. It's a choice that's been made that can be reconsidered.
Thank you. Secondly, Cindy and Lynn, or just Cindy, would like to address us.
Good evening. Lynn and I are here representing WTA. We're going to be making a monthly statement to you about what's going on with us, so everybody's aware. I'm going to talk about the goals that we have for this year, and Lynn's going to talk about just what the beginning of our school year looked like with our teachers. And we have 2 goals. One is bringing the joy back to teaching. We know that in this age of assessment and SLOs and PPGs and PLCs and all of it, that we need to figure out how we fit in as professionals and how we can keep the joy of teaching. So that's our goal, one of our goals this year. The other one is a national NEA goal is social justice. So social justice will be on our radar. We'll be hopefully working with the district to do some things there. We're gonna tap into the high school group and Larry Hale and that group, hopefully. Haven't talked to Larry yet. Now he knows though. And hopefully just bring in some speakers for our teachers, maybe do some book studies, just really get an awareness of how does social justice fit into our lives as teachers and our students' lives.
Good evening. So we just also thought it would be important to update you on behalf of WTA how we welcomed the new teachers in to our district. And so on the day that we were all back when we were in the PAC, we had a luncheon that day as well, that we welcomed all of our new, I believe, 26 teachers in. Welcomed them, had them sitting in a variety of groups, and just making them feel a valued part and appreciated part of our community. Also just exposing them to sort of the type of culture that we embrace here in Waunakee in our schools. We also had a leadership team meeting then after that, where we talked about our goals, and we feel like we've gained a lot of momentum to start our school year off. And actually, we're just coming from our first September meeting from our leadership team as well. That's where we're coming from tonight. And so we just thought that it would be helpful for you to have that information on behalf of WTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our student representatives. So we have Anaya and Alyssa. And I was privileged to have lunch with them about a week ago, and they are going to be not only telling us about student council this year, but trying to kind of broaden all student activities and bringing us more information about that high school.
Absolutely. So far, we haven't really had a lot happen. Excuse me. It's kind of been the first week of school. Everyone's kind of getting back in the swing of things. Our co-curricular fair is coming up this Friday, so we're hoping to kind of do a little bit more recruiting, I guess you could say, for kind of starting to talk to more clubs and kind of get the word out. But as for student council, we are working on getting Coats for Kids set up with WNC, and our tentative date for that is looking to be September 15th at the football game against Portage. So we're hoping to kind of get that set up, and hopefully that date will work out. We're looking forward to getting to do that. I guess that seems to be our big thing up on the radar right now. And I think Alyssa's going to talk a little bit more about talking to some more clubs so you guys get more details.
So like Anaya said, we have our club org fair coming this Friday. So we made business cards to hand out to each club.
Oh.
And so we wanted to hand that out so we have our email addresses on there so they can contact us so we can learn more about their club and maybe have some people from each club come in and speak. And so then they can tell us more about their club and we can report back to you guys.
So I guess some of the examples
What a
that
good idea.
we're kind of looking to talk to would include like the manga anime club, like the equestrian team, Above the Influence, Gay Straight Alliance, some of those clubs that you may not hear about just commonly throughout the school, but that would be really important clubs to kind of get in contact with, and that might be doing some really interesting things around the school and in the community that would be great to be shared with you guys. So I think that's all we have for you.
But I really appreciate the initiative of the cards and reaching out to the clubs. Thank you.
Of course.
That's awesome.
We're excited. It'll be nice to kind of spread out and really broaden our horizons, I guess, because you don't really get to get in contact with those clubs unless you're in them. So
Yeah,
it's really
perfect.
nice.
Perfect.
Cool.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Thank you very
ladies.
much, ladies.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have board reports. Any board members that did any training or events that they attended that they'd like to share?
I would just like to bring up that the Wisconsin Association of School Boards is having their regional meeting before our next monthly meeting. And a major thing is our regional representative to the board of directors is stepping down. So there's going to be a new one. So if anyone, I know there's been a little talk among some of the regional school boards about who might try and go for it. If anybody knows of anyone or has any comments, I did sign up to go, so let me know.
There is a letter which I received, and I don't know if you have that.
I think we attached it with the.
So it's in board book. Okay. The 3 names of people who have submitted all of the information required to, their names are up for election at that meeting to be taking Nancy Thompson's space. So I guess later on we can talk about how whoever's going to the October 4th meeting, if we want to carpool or how we want to decide who you vote for. Because one representative from our district would vote for one of those 3 candidates or somebody else at that meeting.
Any, Mark?
Actually, Julie and I both were at the PLC, made for the keynote speaker the first day. I don't know if you were there
I
the
just
second.
went the first day too.
But Dr. Cruz did a phenomenal job of setting the table, I thought, for where our district is and where he was hoping to help push them with PLC. And I've heard a lot of favorable comments from various staff members as well. And it was just great hearing him articulate where we are and where we could go, and I think it's a great start for the staff.
I stayed a little bit beyond just the keynote and listened in on some of the additional work that he did with the high school group in particular, and then they were breaking into smaller groups, and
It was a very interactive time, and I just thought it was an excellent opportunity to bring in staff that maybe is new to the district or not as familiar with PLC, or maybe somebody that went 3 years ago, and just be reignited on that topic and get everybody on the same page. Dr. Cruz is an excellent speaker, very, very relatable. So it was just really great that we could make that opportunity available to our staff right here in district this time instead of having to go out of town. It was great.
Thank you both for being there. It's great, a couple days.
Any other announcements? Okay, on to administrative reports, beginning of the school year.
Beginning of the school year, first of all, I think as already shared, we have a number of new staff. I've given you some updates in your weekly memo that I've sent to you, but they're an energetic group, and we're very happy to have them joining our team. It was a fun first week to really overwhelm them with introductions to our district, but I think they've all settled in, and I've heard great things about them. As we went into the first day, I thank Joan for kicking us off and talking to all of the staff. The message that I shared that morning, I'm just going to pass around a card I handed out to all of our staff just as so you can see what we did. One of the pieces that I shared was on one side of our card it has our district vision. Ask the question, how do we meet our vision for all students? And on the other side it says it depends, what do you see? And the concept there was being that we have to look at all of our kids as individuals. We have to look at kind of the data that we have, what's our vision for where we go, and really just making the challenge that we have to look at not only our data but our interpersonal and our all kinds of data that we have. I read a book called We're All Wonders. This is a book about a young man with a physical disability, and the final quote in the book says, "I can't change the way I look, but maybe, just maybe, people can change the way they see." And so that was part of the challenge, was just saying, you know, we've got lots of kids, and that's our business, is working with our students, and it piggybacks off of really what Cindy was sharing about kind of the joy of teaching. The joy of teaching is in the kids. I mean, the data pieces help us to inform us as far as how we move forward, but it's kind of how do you interact with our kids, and then how do you look deeply and to find out what do you see, and then how do we best service, and how do we best provide the programs that are necessary to meet all of their needs. So that was really how we've kicked off the year. We followed up then very soon after that with, as Mark and Julie already said, 2 days with Dr. Cruz. He spoke on the PLCs. I had the opportunity not only hear his keynotes, but then to tag along with him and Tim and others to each of the buildings to hear the work that he was doing there. The themes that I took away were really looking at the importance of defining district leadership teams and what are the roles of those teams and how do those fit, and does everybody understand kind of what those roles are. Conversations around common formative assessments, certainly an area that we are continuing to work on across the district. A discussion about climate and culture. That climate is sometimes how you feel, culture is how you act. So how do you start to create a culture of working together in collaboration? And then he used a scale that a researcher had put together on collaboration, with 1 being the lowest level of collaboration where you're really trying to question why it even happens, and 7 being the most enculturated within your system. It's just how we do our work. And he spoke at the keynote about being that moving through steps 1, 2, and 3 are where a lot of schools end up. Getting up hill 4, step 4, he said, was kind of like the marathoner running into the hill, and that was the steep climb. And as he went around with Tim and I, and we had lunch with him for those couple days, he said all of our schools are committed into, are deeply into 4 up to 6. So that was really positive. I mean, that was kind of the pieces that we felt kind of where we were, but it was good to hear through the conversations and the work he had with our staff that that's where he felt we were as well. So I think he's really pressed us to take a look at what's happening in each of our buildings. In the next, forget if it's next month or the month after that, we will be having a PLC report here, and the part of the the framework of that is to really hear what we've taken away from Dr. Cruz, how we've applied some of those pieces to the work that's happening in each of our buildings, and then be able to report to you as far as kind of what's been happening in our journey down the PLC path. The good piece is, I think, is that we have the PLC Institute next year is in Madison. It's at Monona Terrace. So we're very happy that that will be here. There's also some things happening with ASA and some other groups. So I think PLCs are certainly something that our regional districts around us are also involved with. I specifically heard from Wisconsin Heights and New Glarus that we just did an update around the table with regards to what were on the minds of the superintendents from Dane County. Those came out specifically from those two districts. I believe McFarland and others are also engaged in this kind of work. So, but they'll be around in Madison next year. So next summer, if there's an opportunity for you to be able to attend the Institute, that's a pretty close one for you, for our staff and for anyone who would be interested to go to. Additionally, when we take a look at enrollment, this Friday is the third Friday count, big day in Steve's world, where we really kind of do that audit of enrollment to see how many students we actually have, and then we put that into an FTE count. When we take a look back at what we projected for our enrollment for this year, it was 4,236. As of this morning, we were 4,264. So when we take a look at it, we're probably was at 27, 28 kids up. That doesn't include, I didn't have the updated numbers on early childhood, but the positive is that we're in the plus 20, 25 to the good. So once we come through the third Friday count, we always find that there are some kids that will formalize what their attendance is. I think it's always a piece where we know that there are some students that are in our system that didn't come for whatever reason, or they've chosen open enrollment and went one direction or another. So we'll be clarifying all of those things and then putting it into an FTE number to bring and report to you in the future. So positive is that we have continued steady growth. When you look at kind of the range of our class sizes, it's from a kindergarten of 270 kids. I mean, that's pretty typical of where we start, and then those grow as the kids move through. Our largest class is our 9th grade with 347. So that's a big class. That's probably the biggest class that we've seen. So we have definitely some pockets of growth, and it's not necessarily consistent. We run from really the high 200s to the 320s, 330s is kind of where we ebb and flow out of with our enrollment. But once we get through the third Friday count, we'll give you a more detailed report on where we are with enrollment, and that'll inform us from a budget perspective too, because that third Friday count is what sets our financial numbers for the year. So other than that, it seems like it's been a good start to the year, and it's moving fast already. That's my report.
Thank you, Randy. The strategic plan presentations tonight, we have two. One, internal controls by Steve, I think.
Yes, thank you. So this report is really going to be a follow-up to the report that I prepared for you last year. We started to try to see if we could find some comedy around the topic of internal
I saw that
controls.
you were, that was
And
good.
there really wasn't a lot out there, actually. But we did manage to pull a couple of images to share with you to just start out the presentation on internal control that I think I'm the guy in the middle on the bottom, if you ask folks around here.
So you know what Steve really did was when I got done speaking on the first day, when he says, when you come in and ask me if the budget's balanced, he's gonna tell me it depends. I said that was not an appropriate answer.
Well.
I was going to mention I am collecting these for use throughout the year.
So,
what we're going to cover tonight is really basically the main point is really what we have worked on between October of 2016 and where we are tonight, and just touch upon this topic from a broad perspective. As you can recall, under the budget and finance section of the strategic planning initiatives, there is a a blue box with the internal control topic highlighted there. The other one underneath there is analytical planning, which will come later on this year for discussion, more along the lines of budget planning. The purpose of internal controls, we did repeat the slide from the slide that we showed to you last fall, so I'm not going to go over it again, but just the overall purpose of why it is that we are tackling this topic. Who is involved? I want to make sure to just highlight, we do have a new audit firm that the board hired for, that came in this summer. That's Wagner CPAs, so we do have a new participant with the who is involved as part of the process of reviewing our internal controls. What we have accomplished, I'll start with the banking area. We decided that we were going to put a focus on making sure that our systems were best practice in the areas that are identified on this slide. We worked with the IT department to create a secure workstation. And what that means is whenever we do any financial transactions from our office now, we do not just log into Internet Explorer or Google Chrome like you might at home to access your banking or credit card information. We now log in through a secure server that has been set up in the IT department in the school district. And then we connect to our banking institution, our credit card institution. So it is not accessible to anyone who would potentially be hacking it. It is just an additional layer of security. Very few forms of government do that. It may not be necessary, but we just thought we would go that extra step to make sure that we are doing best practice in these areas. We met with the State Bank across Plains to make sure that we had implemented all of their fraudulent measures that they have in place. We have worked with them to make sure that we have the state-of-the-art systems in place, meaning that if anybody were to, let's say, take a check of ours or get a check of ours and to create one and try to send it through our accounts, we would receive an email notification. We have to approve that before it would go through. That would be the same thing for anybody trying to pull money out of our account. No one would be able to access our account even if they had our account information, because we have to log into the banking system and actually approve it. The last item is in response to a couple of cases of fraud that occurred in Wisconsin public schools last year, where school districts were receiving emails spoofed from a superintendent's email address or someone else to a business manager saying, please transfer funds to this location. It needs to occur immediately. And there were several cases in Wisconsin where funds were actually sent to locations that were not actually approved. It was fraudulent. And so what we put in place is a secured email system. It's the same system that our bank is using. And what that means is that if our payroll specialist, Tammy, would want to request money from our office to cover the payroll, it would be sent through a secured email system, would then have to be opened on the other end using a secured email system. So we would then know if we ever do receive a request for money from anyone not using that system, that it's not legitimate. Again, that's a little, I'm not aware of a school district that's purchased this type of secured email, but given the fraud that's been occurring in this area, we felt it was a good investment to make. So in the banking area, we've been doing quite a bit in the last year. The audit accountability area, what we have done is we've gone back to all of the internal controls that we put in place, and we've established a rubric identifying the items that we are auditing or looking for in our office. We will be be monitoring the error and accuracy rates, sharing that information with the staff member and their administrator, and then providing opportunities and paths for improvement. And the whole point behind this is just to improve the overall quality of the transactions in our organization. And by creating that rubric, and you can see the one to the right has been created for purchase orders that are $5,000 and above, it shares with all of the buildings and departments the specific details that LaDonna Radel is searching for when she's reviewing these transactions prior to approving them, and it will signal to everyone who is submitting that information to us in a different format, more of a checklist format, what it is that we're looking for. Now, folks already know about this, but you have to really read through our internal controls in a different way to pull this out. This is going to present it in a much easier to read format, a checklist type approach that we think will really help improve the accuracy of our staff meeting the requirements that we have in these areas. In June, our new audit firm, Wagner CPAs, came in and spent 3 days with us doing initial auditing for the school district. Their main goal for that 3-day period was to really get to know the school district and to get to know all of the processes and procedures we had in place. They took a look at both the practices already in place as well as the practices that we had proposed to change. And they had comments for us on both. So as an example, in the credit card area, they had a suggestion for us that administrator credit card transactions in Skyward be moved to the district administrator level, meaning both through our financial system and through our Google tracking system, that would both be moved to the next level. In addition, the district administrator's transaction would be moved to a different level, meaning the treasurer of the district. So we're moving those transaction approvals up to a different level for the administrator card based on their feedback. And then the other things that they gave us feedback on were really changes that we had pending for both accounts payable and purchase order. They gave us some other options that they wanted us to research within the Skyward software first before making any changes to see what could be done through those means.
So I'm sorry, Steve, just for clarification, so does that mean that Randy's then approving the credit card transactions from all of the other administrators in the district?
So their recommendation was, so we have 2 cards. So like in the business office, we have a business manager card that I would use to go to a WISBA conference. And we have a business management checkout card that we use as an example to pay our cell phone bill. So we've separated the transactions previously. Their suggestion is that the transaction flow also now include in Skyward not only being done by Jerry in my office, who handles all of the transactions. Jerry forwards it to Rebecca and Randy for another layer of review. And we also have LaDonna reviewing them all like she always has before. So we have a credit card audit program as well. They viewed this as another layer in our credit card reporting system that would improve the accountability of the process. And so we've actually implemented that already. So they did put that suggestion in place for us, so it's the transactions get moved one more time than they were in the past.
So like Rebecca and I sat down today and did that. That was our first iteration of doing it. And we had any of the administrator cards that had action on them, which was probably about half of them. And we went through each of the transactions, made sure that they were in compliance. If there was, we had minor discrepancies as far as Steve talked about the 2 cards. We had some things that we needed to communicate. You should be putting it on the other card, but they were all legitimate school district type purchases. We then had a method to go through to check off on them in Skyward, and then there was a Google form that I had to sign off on. So that was the process we went through. So.
How long did that take?
Yeah, that's.
Well, this was our
This
first
is our
month.
first time.
Okay.
Hour? Yeah, I think it'll go faster as we move through it, but this was our first time when we sat side by side, went through it together so we could see the Skyward piece and the Google piece all on each on a different screen and go through it.
And then you're doing something now too, it sounds like.
You're doing Randy's,
Randy's?
is that correct?
Mine's really exciting, Gary.
Yeah, we caught him for 17 cents this month. Actually, he caught himself.
I
Even
tipped
better
too
yet.
much, yeah.
So that was an excellent process to have the auditors really do that. It was nice to have a fresh set of eyes to really come in and provide their perspective on not only the practices we currently have, but the ones we were looking at. In the credit card area, we've also made some changes in the last year about how we are asking staff to acknowledge the user agreement. We've now moved that to Skyward as well. In the past, it wasn't a Skyward related process, and now it is in Skyward that has to be completed. We've set limits with our credit card company as far as what maximum transaction size could go through. We've set limits as far as the merchants and what merchants can go through. And then as identified on the bottom, have changed the process of approval to add an additional layer. So quite a bit of activity in this area. Communication, we created a purchasing acknowledgement in Skyward when all staff return this fall for making purchases using district funds. Again, the main theme that our auditors gave us when they were here this summer is to move as much as you possibly can into your financial system. So if you're asking people to sign off on things or record things separately, find a way to move it into your financial system, and that's what we've been doing with these things. Classmunity, we had a very successful trial of that product last year with things like Warrior Stadium Innovation Center. And so we have expanded the use of Classmunity as the district's approved management system for all fundraising activities. We're actually, if you go to the Classmunity page now, you will see a number of them. In the lower left-hand corner, you see the Prairie Stomp is now identified on Classmunity, and there's Classmunity campaigns for hurricane relief. So you'll see a number of campaigns now being launched through the Classmunity portal, which is an excellent place for the public to see across all of our schools what type of fundraising efforts are going on. So that is now the tool that we are using for fundraising for all schools. RebTrack, we're really excited about the continued expansion of RebTrack. RebTrack is our online payment system for things like tickets to the play, the musical. We've expanded it to use the web store, so the web store is available now. Community ed classes are now available through here. School apparel purchases are now available through here. We're also using it now for the concert that's going to be coming up next month. So we're using this for more and more different avenues to collect funds electronically to really continue the movement away from cash transactions and more electronic. So we're really making a lot of progress. You can see the chart at the bottom really shows the transactions that are occurring over time. And generally speaking, we're seeing an increased use of the RebTrack product. And then internal control development. Internal controls were developed for the areas identified. And then we identified what the development process includes, how we go about developing and implementing internal controls, what that process is, who's involved, how we launch it, how we present it, as identified at the bottom of that screen. Some of the things that we've learned, number one is the timing. You know, with an organization of our size, you have to carefully time how many of these you do and when you do them. A soft launch meaning, you know, start something out and then learn what it is that needs to be revised. get it going, but then be flexible to make changes as you need to. Volume, how many of them you choose to do at one time. Input, meaning making sure there's individuals at the administrative assistant level, administrator level who deal with this stuff that have an opportunity to share with us what their thoughts are. Because there's a number of things that come up that we would not have thought about without them sharing that input with us about different scenarios that occur. Standards and expectations, you know, developing standards, consistent ones, communicating those out, and then having accountability in place once everybody understands what those are, and then really training. This is an area we need to do more of. We do have budgetary administrative assistant meetings a couple times a year where we call about 20 people together in this room, but quite frankly it's not enough. We need to do that more often, you know, to continue to provide that training for folks. Our goals as we move forward, to monitor all implemented internal controls, evaluate additional opportunities. This next one is really where our main focus is going to be. Continue to use technology and Skyward to improve our internal controls and related processes, and then involve other departments as they relate to finance. An example would be human resources. Review all previously drafted internal controls for clarifications, consistencies, the rubric that I identified, and then launching additional internal controls over the next several months. The major category is really accounts payable. When our audit firm was out, they challenged us to try to find a method within Skyward for communicating information from the buildings to central office when a bill was ready to be paid. Right now we're using a Google submission sheet as the communication tool to let us know when an invoice is ready to be paid, as well as the requirement to attach the invoice. Their suggestion is move the entire process within Skyward, so we are looking at some modules that Skyward has introduced, which would really change the way accounts payable works, but it would keep everything within the system. As our auditors looked at that, they viewed that the Google Sheet communication process introduces a possible point of error, and they want to eliminate any possible points of errors, and keeping it within the financial system would be one way of doing that. So we're researching what other schools have set up and what these new modules in Skyward could potentially do for us. So that's our major change that we'll be looking at implementing this year. Funds management is one that we are targeting in the second half of 17-18 for implementation in 18-19.
What does that mean?
So funds management revolves all the way around the topics of banking, like we had showed a little bit earlier, to receipting in the schools, to using Infinite Campus to collect fees electronically, RebTrack, which we showed on a few slides earlier. Right now, we've taken an approach in the district that products like RebTrack are voluntary. So we have not required the high school to sell prom tickets using RebTrack. They chose to do that. They said this would be a good tool for us to use. As we would explore funds management, the question is, do we begin requiring the movement of these type of, you know, sales onto an online platform? Dance tickets at the middle school might be an example, or at an intermediate school. Do you want to start requiring the sales of these tickets electronically rather than allowing someone to bring in $3 to the office? So right now, that would be the major piece under funds management is, will we potentially begin requiring some of these pieces instead of just offering them as things that people could choose to use?
What's the downside of not requiring it?
The downside is we do hear from some parents that they have a technology gap. Maybe they don't have the technology at home. Maybe they don't have the skills. The systems do come with a service fee. So you do hear from some of our parents that moving it in that direction is concerning for them. We have done there's some things you can do. You can offer the technology available to people when they come in. There's different things you can look at doing, but we do hear that from some folks that does create some barriers, especially if you're not, English speaking. RebTrack is in English, so there are some barriers that do exist that we would need to look at if we were going to start requiring the use of some of these products. And that's why, as we've learned with some of these internal controls, something that seems it seems like it should be easier than it is, we realize it's really not easier when you really start jumping into it. There's a lot of things that come up around it that you just have to take the time and problem solve. And in the end, we can figure it out, like we did with Class Immunity that we're launching as a requirement. But there were a lot of questions around Class Immunity and what fits and what doesn't fit and how should you use it. So the development of policies, procedures, and internal controls ends up taking longer than you would think that it would, which kind of leads nicely into my last slide. So if you can't see the colors, it's going to be hard to see what this is, but this slide was really just designed to kind of showcase the point that it's not as easy as you think. This is an example of an exercise where you would look at the chart and try to say the color but not the word. And you might think it's really easy, but if you do it, it's actually not as easy as you think it is. So we've learned that with internal controls that generally speaking, it's not quite as easy as we think it is. It's going to take a little bit longer than we thought it was going to. But in the end, it's always worth doing it. I remember when Randy put the strategic planning process together and that box was on there, I said, well, we'll be done with that in like 9 months. So then what are we going to put in that box instead? And Randy said, well, I'm not sure that's a 9-month thing. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to show him that we can do this in 9 months. Well, it wasn't a 9-month thing. So he was right about that. So I would say we're 50% done. We've made a lot of progress. In the next 2 years, I would say we can accomplish the other 50% and really have all of this where we'd like it to be and move it more into just a monitoring and maintenance phase as opposed to the development phase that we're still in. So it's exciting to continue getting through it. And it's definitely taking a little bit longer than we would have liked, but we're making a lot of progress, and I think we're doing some good things getting it there. Questions, comments?
Peggy.
I've just got one, and it relates to just kind of the comment earlier about the funds management and requiring versus not of certain things. I think, it'll be interesting as the discussions move forward in those areas, because you always do hear about individuals in the community that don't, we can't make assumptions about what people have the ability to do or not, or have access to in terms of resources. But there may be an opportunity, particularly because this is an area which touches the outside more when it comes to purchasing tickets for musicals and stuff like that as well, or maybe partnering in some way with even, like, say, the new library or something like that, in providing opportunities for the district and library to collaborate and stuff like this, because they'll have the technologies available too, and it might just lend itself to some community ed stuff that'll move everybody forward a little bit, help increase comfort levels. So, good stuff. What do you think?
I just was really impressed by the entire report, and that represents a ton of work. So I'm just really appreciative of how far we've come. I am curious what it was like working with the new auditors, and will we be getting the usual audit report like we do from the outside audit group? Is that yet to come?
So the audit report will likely come in November or December. They have prepared a 3 or 4 page report on internal controls. They wanted us to have that feedback immediately outside of the formal audit process. They did ask me, you know, what would your board like to see in the formal reports? And I said, my impression is they would like to see information in the formal reports, and that when you get to that point in time, let's talk about, you know, including your comments in there.
Impressions,
And
whatever.
what you've seen
Yeah.
in there. So they've talked with me about that. They're probably a couple months away from getting into the development of that. But I like their approach with saying, well, why don't you get started on this stuff? Don't wait for our report. And then we'll kind of talk about that later. With what Randy and Rebecca were referring to, their thought was, well, don't wait for the report. Let's get that going and let's try to see what that looks like. So that's what we did, and their comments on some of the other things. So their biggest, I would say, takeaway was they were looking at everything from the angle of reducing the risk for errors.
Yes.
And what could be done to reduce that, and to provide clear information to everybody working here as to what the expectations were. So it was very helpful to have, in my opinion, a different perspective to come in and look at that. And I think we benefited a lot from the decision that the board made to go with this audit firm.
It's such an interesting trade-off between, you want it to be nimble, flexible, easily user-friendly, whatever, but then you also want it to have all these checks and balances and so on and so forth. So it feels to me already like this firm maybe is going to be a little better than the last one we had engaged in terms of having ideas and helpful suggestions in prioritizing how to attack that.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, Steve and his staff have done a great job with this. It's been an ongoing process.
Next report, we have academic and career plans.
So, Tim, Michelle, and Ty are here this evening for academic and career plans.
Take care.
Move.
Well, they're gonna,
Yeah. I think it's better than your fine.
We'll try not to pin everybody's ears back. Good evening, everybody. We're here this evening to update you on academic and career planning. I think you know Ty Jury and Michelle McGlynn. Just as an overview, we're going to go through the relationship to the strategic plan. What is academic and career planning? What have we accomplished? What have we learned? And some next steps. So first of all, to kind of put this in relation to where it is on the strategic plan, we are one of the blue tiles under teaching and learning. In addition to being part of our strategic plan, this is one of those items on the strategic plan that is not just something we wish to do as a district. We're also being responsive to a state level initiative. If you remember the overarching Agenda 2017, academic and career planning is kind of the last major installment of the Agenda 2713 in terms of implementation. And here we are, it's 2017, so we're coming to the end of that rollout. The purpose statement for this particular tile is that students will develop individualized academic and career plans to guide their learning and future planning. So if you had to boil this down to one sentence, this would be the sentence.
So what is academic and career planning? It's kind of a 4-step piece, and they want to make sure that it's really student-driven, that the teachers or the staff members in the school district are just facilitating things, because we want those students to come up with what's going to work best for them, not us telling them what's going to work best for them. There's a process and a product. Obviously, the process is those steps that they're going to do to get to that point, and that product is that end result. So we as a staff, 512, are trying to come up with really good ways to have that process, to have them have those experiential learning activities and other things that they're going to do to kind of create those academic and career plans for those years that they're in school.
Quick question, when does this start? What grade?
Sixth
Sixth.
grade.
Typically, if you think back probably to when we were in school, our 4-year traditional plan, 9 through 12, it was all product-based. You had tests, you had exams, you planned out college, you had those career applications. In some classes, typically the vocational education classes, is really where they targeted that. Career development might have been a class that you took. It wasn't talked about in any other class, really. High school graduation, you're done. See you later, that's the end point. And career development really fell on the counseling or the guidance office staff. ACP, the vision by the state and the school districts, are really engaging more of that process base, that all classes in the high school, including all staff and all the way down through 6th grade, that career application is developed throughout different classes, whether it's English, whether it's math, whether it's social studies, to have those students engaging in those conversations on what they want to do with their future. High school graduation is just a checkpoint, whether it's career, military, post-secondary, gap year. That's just the next stepping stone. That's not their end point. And that career development really is a whole school responsibility. It doesn't just fall on the school, the career coordinator, doesn't just fall on the counseling staff. That we really need all staff involved in this in order to meet all the needs of those students.
So they break down the process into 4 sort of puzzle pieces or stages. And the first one, know, is generally started at the intermediate and middle school level. So the who am I, the get to know yourself, interests, surveys, skills, strengths, things like that. And then getting into the end of middle school and then the start of high school is the where, the explore part. Where do I want to go? Looking at the career clusters, the career pathways, different opportunities you can get into once you do graduate. The third one is the plan. How am I going to get there? This is more at the high school level. When there's specific goals set, they choose different courses based on the clusters of interest, the activities they're doing, and then talk about the reality of what it's going to take to get to that point. And the fourth one is, again, the go. You kind of recalculate as needed, and it's sort of an ongoing process. You know, you start something, you stop at some point, you're not excited about it anymore, and you go back and try something new. So there was a slide that I love, Dr. Cruz, when he presented to us, there was a screen that had the road to success, and there was a straight line, and then there was really the reality, which was just this massive squiggle and big glob that got to the end point as well. But it was just the way that we kind of think about our own lives even as we get older. That's the same kind of idea with the ACP process, is that there's many off-ramps on the highway, and we all have different ways of getting there. And wherever we end up, we continually go back and start again in some way. So that's kind of the idea behind it. And here was some breakdown of where some of these ideas come from in each of those categories. We have gone through a process. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more, but we've gone through sort of a scope and sequence and a deeper dive with what we were already doing when the process has begun. And a lot of these pieces were already in place. We tried to slot them into better strategic areas of what the ACP template shows. So some of these things are already happening. Many of them in our school were something we didn't have to begin again. And then we tried to put some emphasis on the gaps that we had in some areas and what do we want to add into those pieces that we haven't already begun doing. So each of those phases kind of continually happens through the grades 5 through 12. The accomplishments, as Tim mentioned, there's the DPI model that has been started as of this year by the model, and we have gotten together from last February a bigger work team that was from 5 through 12 in different curricular areas, and we spent a whole day, again, doing a deeper dive into what we were already doing well and what we needed to add in the gaps. We had some counseling time with our groups this summer, do some curriculum development, and we wrote in some activities specifically by grade level of what we wanted to accomplish. So we continued on some activities we were already doing, and then we added in some pieces and layered in some more things that we haven't done as of yet, and tried to figure out which curricular areas could we point to, and not just, again, making it a counseling and a CTE thing, but trying to make it all the way across the different parts of our school. The implementation, we're going to be using the platform Career Cruising, which was chosen by the state a couple of years ago as the software product that we're using for all students to use to create their portfolios. And our goal is to start using that actual product to the students' course for enrollment for grades 9 through 12. So using that as a platform in the intermediate and middle school to start gaining access to their portfolio, and then actually combining that in with course selection, the cluster models that they choose, and all the activities that they're doing into one piece instead of having to go back and forth between all the different software products.
When you say portfolios, does that mean that at the end they may actually have a portfolio in
Yeah.
the traditional sense that we've heard of, different over the years?
Yeah, there are going to be ongoing portfolios in the fact that the different classes that they would be using, so whether it be career development classes in high school or guidance activities or English classes or any other
Projects in art.
Yeah, you can add it, and you can put different products directly into that. You can attach
Okay.
things you're using, and it's all just under one roof rather than going all over the place and kind of combining them.
How much is the student deciding what goes in their portfolio and how much are we directing, guiding?
As we go further, we're trying to get more on the student decision
Right.
side versus us telling them what they should be doing. We're gonna give them a kind of a template of what we show is offered where, and then guide them through the process as they go.
And to encourage them to
Exactly.
add their own
Yes.
artifacts.
What's meaningful to you as a
Correct.
student.
And that's why the career cruising platform was chosen to kind of combine everything into one area so they could continually go back. There used to be kind of a set time frame where the classes were chosen and then you get them in by this time, and then we implemented over spring. This, we can open it up a lot more kind of flexibly and hopefully give them more chances to revisit that over the 4 years.
high school
Yeah,
years.
exactly. More independence. And so again, the career cruising has replaced what we had originally used was WISC careers back a few years ago, and there was a change of career locker. That was another option then, and now they've gone to the career cruising. And we started it last fall at the middle school, second semester at the high school, and this year we'll be implementing it more at the intermediate school level.
And this is a state
This
recommended
is,
or
this is the model
required?
that was chosen by the state.
Okay.
And they fund it through a couple of years for now. And then we also have a business aspect as well called Inspire, where local businesses can choose to join into the process. And Michelle's been really involved with that, trying to get local Waunakee and Madison businesses to be part of this process where they can connect with students or staff at schools and kind of use that blended approach with not just the school but the community aspect as well.
Are businesses signing up in
Yes.
the Inspire?
Yeah, slowly, but it's a work in progress. I had a open house back in March during our staff development day and invited in local Waunakee businesses. And I think I had about a dozen that came in, and I kind of geared it towards learning about work-based learning and then getting them signed up into Inspire. And we had quite a few local businesses, local governments, school district, and different industries, from Pete Trinan over at Mobile doing it to May Vision. So a lot of a variety of businesses to try to connect.
So is their purpose, so they would put job openings in there or
They could put
internship
job openings,
possibilities,
job
apprenticeships?
shadows, apprenticeships. I'd
Awesome.
like to be a guest speaker, they can put that in there. We would like to come to your room and give a presentation on our career. And so they literally have a checklist that they can go through and say, this is what I want to do, and how I would like to be involved. So if all they want is just to have a part-time worker, they can just check that box and be done with it. But our students have the ability to go through Inspire, through that career cruising portal, and see those local businesses and what opportunities they might have to learn about them.
That is way
So,
No, that was yours.
Teamwork.
Memorize mine.
There we go. So some of the challenges that we had along the way, aside from me remembering which is my slide, was we had to make some changes with the student career portfolios and also with the course registration process at the high school in particular. And re-engineering those processes that have been in place for a long time and have developed in certain ways for historical reasons is not a simple task. Getting beyond our core committee and the counseling staff has also been something that we've had to work at. We have many things that we're working on in this district, and we have had to kind of interweave this into that ongoing work. Also, our original plan was not to make the high school transition to from career locker to career cruising until this fall, but then there was a feature change to career locker that had not been well foreshadowed, and we said, do we really want to learn a new version of career locker for one semester? The decision was no, so we moved up our high school career cruising implementation by a semester. On the other hand, there have also been some really great opportunities that have really become more apparent to us as we work through this process. First of all, and those of you that have had children go through the system or who have taught in the system know that we have had many of these components in place for a while. I mean, career cruising, the platform is new, but we have had portfolio software. Career Locker was careers before that. We've had a strong middle school set of activities for career planning. We've had career workshop for about 20 years now, which is really exceptional. So we're building on a lot of strong practices. And this district, and this really goes back to the community, several iterations of the board, has really placed a priority on maintaining strong career and technical education programs. Not all districts have done that. I mean, you know that you have kids open enrolling into us from other districts because of our CTE programs. And you know, the ACP work is about more than career and technical education, but we certainly benefit from having had that legacy of strong CTE programs that we've kept up over the years. Two other things is we've seen as we've worked through this, the soft skills that employers look for really have a lot of congruence with kind of the universal learning we want students to obtain through our PBIS or positive behavior system. And last but not least, our goal here is for all to mean all, and this academic and career planning process, really we've seen the potential to have more meaningful engagement for at-risk kids and other special populations, and you know, as we've just alluded to with Inspire, yet another way to work with our businesses and other community stakeholders that want to be supportive of our kids in this way. So next steps. Some of our next steps are to roll out an updated scope and sequence, and that was, you know, when we've referenced kind of the summer curriculum development time, that's going to be the use of contact time at the high school. This coming year is going to be our first cycle of online course registration in career cruising at the high school. Coming to you as a board later this fall is going to be our PI 26 plan adoption. That's something that's also required as part of the ACP process. And you know, because our grade configuration in our district leaves 6th grade at the intermediate school instead of as part of the middle school, we are kind of moving on to our third phase and working on implementation at the 6th grade level this year. And then, as with everything that we do, we're going to kind of adjust on our data and feedback from stakeholders, students, parents. We're also going to have some local career fair activities, and because Ty and Michelle are more directly connected with the planning, I'm going to kick it over to them very briefly to talk about what these might look like coming up.
So the Dane County Future Quest is actually a Dane County initiative by the consortium to have all 8th graders around Dane County, every school district. We are going to transport the students to the Alliant Energy Center for a Future Quest fair. And it's not supposed to be a general like career fair where students just get to go up to a table and learn about being an electrician or being a doctor or being a lawyer. The businesses and industry that are coming in are being prepped to have something very interactive, so that they'll have something to show them, something to work with their hands. So it's supposed to be very interactive. Each school district is given about a 2-hour block to bring their 8th graders in and go to the Alliant Energy Center to experience this. And so we were kind of excited to be part of that, kind of as a bigger picture.
Is that in the spring?
It's
early December. It's the 6th.
Yeah, first week I think.
Yeah. Last year we had a spring career fair at the middle school for 8th graders, and we had about 15 or 16 local businesses come in, and our students rotated around and saw different people throughout the afternoon, and it was well received kind of as a first phase of some of these other things we're trying to implement.
Another next step is to keep communicating about our work, and before we do this, I'd like Michelle to kind of speak very briefly to intro this.
To keep it brief, Randy and I worked with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation last year in Wisconsin. Basically, they're trying to promote Wisconsin. They want to get away from we're the dairy state to we're much more than that. And so they kind of have a 4-prong approach. They wanted to have 4 distinct groups where they could kind of come together and showcase Wisconsin. One was the young business professionals out of Milwaukee. For the hospitality industry, they work with the Fox Cities, a manufacturing firm up in northern Wisconsin, and then they wanted K-12 schools. And we were lucky enough that we were the school district that they chose to work with in the state. And part of that process was talking through what is it that we could use. And so I spoke to the youth apprenticeship piece and kind of the idea that some parents have a perception that apprenticeships are supposed to take the place of college, that It's supposed to, if a student's in an apprentice, it's just a blue-collar trade. And so we wanted to make sure that we were communicating something bigger of what our work-based learning program is. And so we were lucky enough that they featured on this video, all but one student is from Waunakee. So we'll play that.
It's an amazing opportunity to get your foot in the door for a career. It allows you to discover your passions and even develop interests that you already have.
My school, the career coordinator, mentioned that you can do an apprenticeship for a whole bunch of different fields, and I chose to do one in engineering because that's what I was interested in.
When I first thought about it, I thought it would be a good opportunity not only for me, but also for the students, just to learn something new. I first heard about the apprenticeship program through employability skills at Waunakee High School through my junior year, and then I heard about the opportunity for my senior year.
I was a junior in high school, and I was talking to my guidance counselor about different opportunities for the next semester, and youth apprenticeship was brought up.
I decided I wanted to do the youth apprenticeship because I learned it was hands-on experience and you get paid for working and you get school credits for it.
I know she loves dogs, and she's very much a people person and has for the past couple of years mentioned that she'd like to get in the health field. When they assured me that this is not a replacement for college, I was satisfied with the whole program right from the start.
It's opened so many doors that otherwise I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be exposed to.
I'm hoping to get a lot of hands-on knowledge of things that I really just won't learn in school, and just get a good feel for what an actual engineering job would be like.
So honestly, at first I thought the youth apprenticeship was going to be hard for me with sports and other stuff, but the school built in a work release for me so I can work in the mornings as well.
I got paid to learn in high school and learn about my career.
Next year I will be attending the University of Wisconsin-Platteville for a double major molecular bio crop soil science with a minor in animal science.
This apprenticeship really seems like it could help me get into some of the more competitive colleges.
The ability to learn new things, not be afraid of it, accept the challenge, and just learn as much as they can and do great things in life.
I think being able to have a job and schoolwork gives you motivation in both because you want to succeed in both.
It just laid out the groundwork for me on how to do this as a career.
For people that are considering the apprenticeship program, I would highly recommend it. I've been able to learn a lot and gain a lot of hands-on experiences by being involved.
I would say definitely give it a shot because there's just way too many benefits to ignore it.
You're going to learn how to get that job by the people who currently have that job.
I feel like my expectations were definitely exceeded. It gives me more responsibility and it's setting me up for my future in the best way possible.
So this video is actually featured on the In Wisconsin website as kind of a toolkit video for other school districts to use as part of their Think, Make, Happen initiative. And I'm sure if you've seen, they have a lot of billboards up with the In Wisconsin Think, Make, Happen. And so they're really pushing this. They're putting a lot of money into this marketing piece. And so we're kind of excited to have partnered with them. So I was a little apprehensive when Randy signed me up for this at the beginning of last year. This was a year-long process. I literally took the whole school year to accomplish this.
You were a keynote speaker at their convention too.
Yes, yeah, I did go to the, well, I forget what even it was called in December. It was a future summit, and it was basically all the commerce people. And I had to follow Governor Walker, but we did okay. So he was the keynote, and I got to follow that.
He was your opener.
Yes, he was our opener, yes. And he did talk about apprenticeship, so it was a nice lead-in for me, and I told him that backstage. I said thanks for the foreshadowing of what I was going to talk about. So so I got to speak to all of those people at the Monona Terrace last winter. So
Congratulations.
Great work.
Yeah,
That was
turned out well.
awesome.
I do have one quick question. Is the ACP, is this the one, I mean, like years ago, the special committee at the legislative level was talking about all this stuff and wanted to have these kinds of programs in place. This is all tied to all of this, right? And then the legislature has committed to providing funding to DPI to continue these, and it's kind of, okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's the level of state support on this. I mean, you know, first of all, academic and career planning, I think we should assume this is happening well in schools to begin with. That's why we are here in large part. But to do something that's more systematic and state level support, they've purchased the licensing for the career cruising platform. They have tried to facilitate these kinds of partnerships between WEDC, Department of Workforce Development, DPI, school districts. And the other thing is that the state has been doing annual conferences now for a few years to really kind of amp up the access of professional learning to school districts to pursue this work.
And we just want to keep kind of pursuing that idea that it's a process, not a product. It's
Exactly.
it's not what you put on the website that it is. It's the idea that we're talking about this in a bigger sense, and it's all connected through other classes and activities and outcomes.
Because of what we had in place, it made us a natural candidate to be a part of this kind of
Yeah,
test.
we already had the idea behind it
Yes.
going on all these years. We're trying to put a framework to it now.
I think it's, well, way to go for everybody who's been involved in this over the decades.
I'm curious because it seems to me when it was first being talked about, one of the big components of it was meeting earlier on with students and the guidance, the career counselors and parents, and having one-on-one sit-down meetings. And at the time I was trying to add up in my head, that's a lot of individual conferences. So how has that piece gone? Because there, you know, my assumption went right away to high school, but we were wanting to launch it even further down in Ty. So I remember having this conversation with you several years back. How's that process going, fitting in all those one-on-one conferences with the students?
It's still ongoing. We've still begun, for the most part, still doing small group conferences. At this point, we're trying to keep adding in the individual conference percentage every year. We've tried to get more of the staff involved that have either caseloads of other students. But yeah, again, it's a challenge. I mean, we're trying to put a lot of time into the teaching of the lessons and getting the portfolio to the point where the students can have that knowledge base and have the discussions with their parents at those levels, but it's definitely still ongoing. So we're slow and steady kind of increasing the one-on-one time, but it has been a process.
challenge.
Yeah, it has been.
And at the high school level, they are doing the 10th grade conferencing between the 4 counselors. They meet with every sophomore student and their parent to do this kind of academic and career plan. They have an individual meeting with the freshmen to kind of start it, but then in the 10th grade level, they do meet with the parents. So that is all part of this process as well. And that is something that they've done even before we had this initiative, but it fit right into it, to that model.
And kind of supplemental to that is, you know, beginning with their early years in their portfolio. By the time students have arrived at high school, and again, they're kids, they grow, they change, but you know, we ask them to begin to consider what their potential career fields or career clusters might be. Those of you who are, you know, connoisseurs of our high school guidebook know that years ago, thanks to this lady here, we started showing what courses at the high school were related to which career cluster.
Correct.
And so as we move into using career cruising as the platform, it's going to tighten that information linkage between here's what I'm interested in doing, here's what courses support that.
Could you say a few things about the online registration? How is that gonna replace?
So right now, they still do the hand, you know, meet one-on-one and try to do everything by hand, paper, pencil. So our goal is to move to using career cruising. It has a 4-year planning piece of it where students and their parents can actually go in and kind of drop classes that match that academic and career plan, and then that can be part of the registration process. We aren't there to the point where we're like, yep, this is exactly how it's going to go. The counseling staff has been doing this with the 8th graders, is that correct? This will be the 2nd year that they'll do this with online. So our hope is to get the whole high school to do this. It is definitely a growing pain because we had to pick a platform to use, and going from what all these counselors have done for years and years and years to something that's online. And there's going to be road bumps. I mean, we know there is. So trying to figure out what is the best way to roll this out. You know, do we have our students do it during contact time so that they have that teacher kind of facilitating those conversations versus, hey, go home and sign up for whatever you want to, because we've got prerequisites, we have recommendations. So, and you come from the teaching, you know there's going to be some issues. So we're trying to figure out what is the best way to make this work. But it is our goal to try to do it this year. We'll see.
And the kids will have had experience. I mean, Ty, was this past year your 2nd year? in Infinite Campus?
Yep, secondary.
Yeah, so for 2 years now, in Infinite Campus, which is a student information system, middle school students have gone through an online course enrollment process. Now, Career Cruising does not yet support it at the middle level. So we're going to continue to use Infinite Campus for middle school, but this will be our first year using Career Cruising at the high school. And you know, we've really encouraged both DPI and Career Cruising to look at adding a capability for their middle school grades in Career Cruising, because that's got the tight career plan linkage, which Infinite Campus does not have. So the kids are going to have to look at their portfolio and then think about what they're doing in campus, whereas with this, and check back with us in the late winter if Michelle and I are going, you know, but we think it's going to work well. It's all together in one place, which we think is going to be better for kids.
I'll just tie up and say again, I think this is excellent big picture work and great that we have a framework and a structure to hang a bunch of this stuff off, but to really encourage that we find ways to make that individual contact time happen. There's nothing like that one-on-one time.
Agreed.
Mark, did you have a comment?
I'm just excited about the capability of taking all the parts and shuffling them together, because to link your class registration with your career planning, it's not I'm setting up my classes, but what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really giving the student the opportunity to mesh it together, and they become kind of the stewards of where they're going. And then, of course, with the professional help to guide them, oh, wait a minute, if this is what you want to do, you need to look at this or you need to look at that. But it's to blend it all together. It's exciting to have the kids have a sense of purpose in where they're going versus, as you said at the beginning, to create a product. I mean, the portfolio is a nice thing, but it should be reflecting where you want to go versus something you just create.
Yeah, it's like was mentioned earlier, it's the data with the interpersonal skills and what's that where you can let the students and what are they really wanting to come out doing when they graduate.
And then also the lessons that you learn.
Mm-hmm.
Better to learn some of them in high school
Yes.
than
Oh, yeah.
later on 2 years later.
That's really great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements and correspondence.
2 announcements this evening. First of all, I have a note that I received from the Mount Horeb School District, just thanking Waunakee and the high school for participating in their hurricane relief at a recent sporting event. So we had partnered out and sent out some messages by Infinite Campus saying if you were coming to this event that there was a opportunity to help participate there. Second item you will see, and on an annual basis by regulation, we need to bring in front of you the seclusion and restraint report. Kurt has provided that into the packet, and I shared it under announcements and correspondence as such. There's no action that's needed on it, just for us to be able to share it with the board. I think we're very pleased that as we look at our incidents from 2012-13, when we had to start tracking this, until this past year, that we've seen a decrease in the use of seclusion and restraint with the students. I think our rationale for that and things that we see are some of the changes that we've made with our staffing models, and also with some of the PBIS efforts. So, positive news. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Committees, starting with HR. I don't know, Connie, is there any, the minutes were provided for you.
There's no action items,
No
basically, if there's any
action
questions on
items.
any of the items. More work needed in all the areas,
Yeah.
basically.
I don't know if there's any.
This was just really, we had an
questions?
update on some of the things with regards to some of our goals around salaries and benefits, and also continued work on the superintendent's evaluation model. So that's still continuing to move forward, and good input at the committee level.
And then we have facility.
Basically, there were just 2 items. One was going over the planning schedule for maintenance and facilities, which is still in kind of a draft form and is going to be revised a little bit more before we probably all see it. And the second part was talking about doing surveying on some of our school property, due to, there might be some property line issues going on around a couple of our schools with the residential properties next to them.
So with regards to that, we have received a quote on what that would cost. It's about $2,500 per site for us to do that type of work. So I guess Steve and I are just looking at feedback from the board to move ahead with really surveying our sites that have borders that include residential boundaries. I think some of our other ones are pretty natural boundaries with the road, and ones that we've already redefined with some of our local businesses.
So basically, I think you need a motion to do that, and I'd make a motion that we do that we authorize them to do a survey of both Prairie and Arboretum.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excellent. Thank you.
Policy committee?
Yep. Policy just has a second reading on transportation policy. This was just a, as you recall from last month, was just a policy that we missed updating last year when we changed some of the boundaries with the opening of the new school.
So we do need a motion.
We do
on
need
that
motion
now.
on this evening, yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And consent agenda. We can do them all together, or if there's anything that you want to pull out.
Motion to approve the entire consent agenda.
Motion by Dave.
Second.
Will we be looking at or talking about any of the wellness clinic update or financial reports?
I think we just included those in there. The financial reports are ones that need to have action on, and I think, Steve, you included the wellness update as part of that. I think if you want to have discussion about that, we can pull that item and have some dialogue around it. There's no action needed on that, but that's the place that we located it.
So does that mean we can approve the consent agenda, but then since there's no action on it, still have a discussion on the contents?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. You could approve the consent agenda, we could have a conversation about that item after the consent is approved.
That's fine with me. I just hope we get a chance to talk about it a little bit, that's all.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So I think we have a motion by
Second.
Dave.
Second by Mark.
And a second by Mark. And then we're gonna discuss the clinic after?
Yeah,
or
that's
now?
Well, there's no action required, I think, on the wellness clinic, so we could
No,
approve
we
of
could.
everything and then
So we
still
could
discuss.
approve any discussion on any other items besides that?
Right.
Okay, all in favor of the consent agendas?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
And what we can do is we can locate that in a different spot next time, so it's a little easier to deal with and discuss. So now what we can talk about is in your packet in the consent agenda was the quarterly report on the wellness clinic. I think Steve and Connie worked specifically on putting that together.
So if the board members would like, Rebecca added it to the screen as she could click it and open it if you wanted, or if you just wanted to have a
We
discussion.
can walk through it.
I could certainly walk through it for you, whatever your preference is.
Can you walk through it?
Okay. So what we are looking to do in this report is we receive feedback from the school board. If you remember when Connie first approached, it was maybe the July board meeting, I think, to share information with you that we were receiving on the clinic. We received some good feedback from you on, well, what do these numbers mean? How does this tie to the finances of the clinic? How does it help our overall healthcare cost claims? We've received a couple of different kinds of reports from Dean. First of all, Connie's continuing to receive the monthly usage reports. So the information that we're receiving on a monthly basis as far as how many people are actually visiting the clinic. We did not receive the August report in time to include it in the packet. But in addition to the monthly reports that we've been receiving, Dean has the ability to pull out quarterly data based on the medical record system that's being used at the clinic to provide us a little bit of a deeper look as far as some of the usage of what's occurring at the clinic. So Connie and I pulled out the slides that we thought would be interesting to you to see as far as the usage of the clinic, connected it to some of the financial information to try to provide a 3-month snapshot as far as really how are the operations of the clinic going so far. So you'll see a combination of slides. So the first one is really a big picture overview as far as the performance of the clinic, looking at a couple key categories that we're tracking. The percentage of eligible members who visited the clinic is identified. And remember, eligible members include not only the staff who is on the plan, but spouses on the plan, dependents on the plan as well. The total number of visits that occurred over that period of time. The patients that are attending or visit the clinic are asked to respond to the quality, to give us feedback as far as their service that they received. So in the next category over, you're seeing 96% response to the satisfaction with the clinic, and then the number all the way to the right, you know, what they would recommend the provider, you're seeing that number provided to you as well. You can just roll through them a little bit.
Just
yep,
second on that, total visits, 229. That could be a person that comes 5 times to the clinic?
If you want to go back to that one for a minute. That percentage is the total number.
The
It
229.
could be. You could be going to that multiple times. We also have reporting broken down in unique visits and staff visits versus dependent visits. So we have all of that information available to us, so it can get broken down into deeper categories. This slide, Dean views this as kind of like a snapshot or a big picture overview of what it looks like, but that's a good question, Jack. We do have that level of detail. Rebecca, do you want to go on to the next slide?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I might have read too much Orwell, but since this is the dean provider, could they actually get the data of how many could have used the clinic for visits they did at the main clinic based upon the service they got?
Great
So if I
question.
went for a ear infection appointment to the clinic versus the wellness center.
So that's a good question. So what Connie's doing right now, which you won't necessarily see on this slide, is working very closely with Dean. She's actually asked for all of those codes, the ones that you're referring to for every visit category, to try to analyze which of those should we all be offering in our clinic. Connie's looking for opportunities to actually expand what it is that we're currently doing right now. And so what's the right term, Connie? Whatever those codes are that you're trying to get from
Billing codes.
billing
Every
codes.
single thing that happens.
Yep.
Okay.
So Connie is seeking that right now.
Because that would also be interesting to see if someone could have used it, chose not to, and you know, at least we get a sense of, are we getting more people in there for these procedures than choosing not to use it? Because otherwise it's sort of a
What I think I hear him asking for is, could Dean tell us how many of our employees are going to their clinic and paying co-pays when they could be going to our place for free?
I know I have not specifically asked that question. I don't know if you have.
Yeah,
Connie.
I have not asked that question. I mean, they have the data available. I have never seen a report that showed that, nor have we asked for it. And I think it would require them to set up some queries in a different way than what they've done or have offered or we've asked them to do. But they've got to be able to do it for us.
I would think so. To to be honest, I've been disappointed with our participation
Amen.
numbers. And your one slide shows that, it's down from what the goal that we had with that. But that's the question. If I could be wrong in that our participation's down just because our group hasn't gone much, which would be great. That means our overall insurance rate would go down because we would be hitting less than from when we had those insurance meetings, what I learned with that. But if they're just down and they're going to the other, then it's defeating the purpose and we're spending a lot of money on a project that isn't paying off because they're going the other way. And then it would be the question of, in this trial, how do you increase that? And if you can't, then you get rid of this. So it's a money thing in the end, whether it's working or not. I see it as a great thing for our people to have an opportunity to go someplace else and get quicker service and whatever, but if we don't use it
Only
right.
if they use it.
One of the things that Steve touched on that we are working on is expanding the services that are offered in the clinic. So from the time we opened until now, there have been limited things that can happen in the clinic, and it's acute care, and it is the things like the ear infections or sinus infections. But they don't do in-depth procedures, and they are limited in what they offer. So we understand we're trying to drive more, I'll call it business, to our clinic and keep it off of our claims with our health insurance. One way we can do that is to broaden the services that are offered at our clinic. So we have been pushing this and having these conversations with Dean. They're open to that. They're telling us that will happen. We're waiting for the final confirmation from them as to, at this point, what services they're willing to expand. But those conversations are taking place. We do know that we need to get more people through the clinic and do anything that we can to make that happen.
And it opened when again?
April, beginning of April.
So this would have been like the spring, summer, and this data goes through when?
The end of June.
Yeah, this is the
Oh, so it's
quarterly.
only 3 months.
It's
Okay.
3 months of data. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does this drive, do we have an access problem on the number of hours that it's open?
It's open 8 hours a day.
Okay, and is Dean Clinic open 8 hours a day?
More than.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
and
so it
they've
could-
done some expansion too. I noticed that some of their clinic hours are open in the evening, but we've got one full-time person. So we've set up a schedule right now that seems to be meeting a lot of needs, but we do intend to survey our staff to find out if we could alter the schedule in some way that would make it easier for them to use.
Connie, who are you navigating with to expand the services? Is Al helping you with that, or?
Al has been very much involved in those conversations. In fact, he's kind of pushing those conversations at the corporate level. Steve and I haven't been present, but he's been keeping us informed about that. We also have had those conversations with a couple of the people in leadership positions within Dean.
On the other reality too is that we've had a low employee quartile in terms of being on the job.
Yes.
And so when you're away from the job, I don't know how many, I would imagine summer is a less involved time. Look for the kinds of things that can be covered at the clinic as well. So being in the school year, I would assume there could be a greater volume than we had June to August.
Well, and we anticipate, I mean, when you just think about your own family,
Right.
I mean, illness tends to start hitting as the weather cools down. We did have all of our new employee physicals take place at the clinic for the first time, so we're excited about that. We plan on offering our flu shot clinic, offering flu shots there. We've always done them within our school buildings in past years, and we've limited them to staff members because that's all we could accommodate. So we'll do that in our clinic, and we'll open it up to not only staff but family members and try to drive that. Camp physicals, sports physicals. So, and we're hoping to expand that. Really, we'd like to see just plain annual physicals take place there. We're working on that.
If I could just roll through a few more of the slides and just cover a couple of additional pieces of data. One of the most important things for us to keep our eye on is the $18,234 figure. And what that references is costs that would have gone through the healthcare plan if they had actually been, the services had been performed in the clinic as opposed to our clinic. The first number is pretty much irrelevant because we would never pay a retail fee for one of our staff members who went to a clinic. They just track that internally for dean purposes, but for our purposes, it's not the figure that we would look at. It's the contracted health plan savings. That means if I went to our clinic for an ear infection and I would have gone to urgent care, what would that have actually cost in urgent care? We identified for them that that was going to be a very important number for us to know. And so for the first 3 months, that number was $18,234. And when we get to the end of the presentation, you can see what that actually looks like as far as a percent and how that is looking towards our goals. But that's a key number for us to continue to track as we move forward. Thank you. Eligible member visits, you'd see the information as far as broken down by employees, spouses, and dependents. As I mentioned earlier, we are tracking all categories of individuals who are participating or being a patient at the clinic, so we could break that information down between those various groups. The activity that's occurring, the lab visits, the type of visits that someone is, going to the clinic for is being tracked, so we can tell, what the purpose of the visit was, so that we can have that information as well. The top 10 reasons for why individuals visited our clinic are identified in this slide, so you'll get further detail as far as why are people actually going to the clinic and what are they being seen for. The satisfaction data, again, for the patients who are going there, we're collecting this data so we know, for those that are going, what type of service, in their opinion, are they receiving when they go there. The monthly average cost information that's being shared with you, the very bottom line, you're seeing a monthly cost of $18,965. That information has already been shared with you, but we're just connecting it to the usage. The total investment data, this has been shared with you as well, but it's just, again, connecting it in this format so you can see that compared. The metrics, what we identified previously as far as what are we tracking and what percentages our staff attend, various features. You look at number one, the patient clinic engagement. We identified the total number of staff members and what our goal was for staff participation. We had targeted a 25% staff participation by March 1st of 2018. We're currently at 13.2% for all members, on target to meet that goal. So as we're continuing to track that data, we are moving towards the 25% participation. We identified a goal of 90% or higher for staff satisfaction for those who participated in the clinic. Currently, that figure is tracking at 96%. Wellness, as we've talked a little bit about this, we were the first client that worked within Dean's healthcare system to establish a connection between the biometric screening and actually the medical care. We had a form that staff members could fill out to share their information with our clinic to go over for an individualized wellness session. We targeted 5%, knowing that not only was this new for Waunakee schools, this is new in the entire geographical area. So we need to build capacity and let folks understand what this is really doing for them. But we did have 7.25% of staff participate in this process in that quarterly period. The fourth piece, return on investment.
Excuse me, Steve,
Yep,
so
go
does
ahead.
that mean they checked the box and their information was shared, or does that mean they actually went through and got the visit?
They went through and got the visit.
Okay.
So this is staff that actually checked the box, turned in their form, and then went over and scheduled the
Okay.
time with Suzanne in the clinic. And the last one is really the return on investment confirmation. This is where that last bullet point, where we talk about the 18,000 over the 3 months, that's at a low threshold right now. When you compare the 18,000 over the 3 months, the first 3 months of using it, that's only about a 1.4% return on investment for avoided costs. That's not at what our target level is. So the other 3 key metrics, I would say, are going according to plan. The fourth one, the return on investment, is behind where we would like it to be at this point, which is the dollars that are being avoided for the health plan. But a couple of comments I just want to share about that piece and really where we want to go with this with the insurance committee. One of the biggest pieces, I think, with the wellness clinic that we need to keep in mind is for this geographic area, this was really a first wellness clinic for a public school, or really, in most employers in the area. UW opened one with Sub-Zero right around the same time we opened ours. So there's just not many of these up and running. So the whole concept of doing this is really new in this area, and we really needed to build capacity for our staff to go over and have an opportunity to go to the clinic. So even though the numbers are maybe trending where they are, we expect that they're going to increase over time. As Connie mentioned, all of our new staff were able to go over there and have an opportunity to meet with Suzanne. Suzanne was able to meet with all staff at the beginning of the school year and get up and share a little bit of information about herself. So we started it at a time of year when typically people's medical care starts dropping. You typically don't go in as often in April, May, or June. So we started at a time where the numbers are lower than we would like them to be, but I think to some degree that could be expected. And as we move into the fall season, we should start seeing the return on investment increase, and we should start seeing the participation increase. Another point to mention is for those schools and other entities that have started a clinic, they've typically implemented a change in their benefit program at the exact same time. And what I mean by that is often what you see is a change in deductibles and co-pays being added at the exact same time you start your clinic. So you would typically see someone do a office visit go from $20 to $30 while you're opening the clinic to drive more individuals to go to the clinic. Right now, if you want to describe it as this, it's really a soft launch. We did not change our benefit program at all while we opened this up. So for our staff, the same benefit program exists as it did before we opened the wellness clinic. That's not common when these are open, but we were approaching the last year of a long-term plan or contract with Dean, and as the insurance committee takes a look at this fall, our agreement with Dean ends on June 30th of 2018. It is very likely our insurance committee is going to be working through a request for proposal process, and we'll be taking a look at, if we keep a wellness clinic, does a $20 office copay deductible make sense? Does the $20 need to be $25 to encourage more folks to go to our clinic? Those are all of the factors that will be looked at by the district's insurance committee over the next 9 months. The insurance committee will be busier in 17-18 than we've been in the last 3-4 years. We will be looking at all of these factors in total to determine the complete spend in this arena. And you can't really look at the $250,000 that we're spending on the clinic while ignoring the $5 million that we're spending on the health insurance benefit program. You have to look at the whole 5.25 million together and really make a decision, what is the best way to use our 5.25 million, and to use it together to really coordinate a benefit structure. So we started it in really a soft launch type approach to generate interest and to show that this concept can work and can grow over time. But it's really going to shift to the insurance committee to take a look at this concept as well as the complete benefit structure that we're offering staff, to work together with that committee to really establish on July 1st of 2018, what do we want our benefit structure to look like moving forward. So the insurance committee is going to be extremely busy this year. Mark?
So you made some really good points. Question I have, just looking at chart 4 or whatever it is. Can we make the number we need in terms of savings relying primarily on our staff, or do we have to have the dependents and the spouses involved for that? And then the second question is, what percent of our staff's family live out of district?
Oh, good point.
Because, if we, I want this to be successful in the worst way, but if we need more of our dependents, if too many of them are living out of district, that's probably never going to happen. And I don't know if that number has been looked at. But is it viable by just referring to our staff, having our staff use it, or do we really need the family to make it work?
And if you're looking at like just the pure numbers and just looking at the clinic alone, we would need approximately triple the number of visits we're having right now for the return on investment to match exactly what we're spending. So if you look at the $18,000 return on investment for 3 months, it's about a $19,000 cost per month for the 3 months. So if you look at the total participant pool in a given month, for just the clinic itself, you would need to potentially get that number to triple. Now, to get it to triple, you would certainly need to drive quite a bit more traffic that way, which is why a lot of districts and other employers look at the bigger health plan as well in conjunction with the clinic to try to determine what is the best mix between both a local clinic and your larger health insurance benefit program. In our case, they aren't connected right now. The clinic has been started as a trial on its own, outside of looking at how does it directly connect to the larger $5 million expenditure. So they will need to be connected together. I think the other piece that Connie and I have spent a lot of time on, that at this point it's impossible to identify, is what is the return on investment for the individuals who did their health risk assessment, saw information on there that perhaps they were on a path that may lead to to become a diabetic, heart attack, whatever, met with Suzanne, and based on information that they were provided with by Suzanne, changed some behaviors that now they are no longer on that course that they were. You'll never see that anywhere because it's a claim that didn't happen. And that's very difficult to capture. But what that will do in the long term is it will change your utilization in clinics like the Sheboygan Clinic that have been in place for a number of years. Their long-term trend has changed, meaning typically you would see health insurance costs go up at like 7% per year. Theirs has been under 5%. Because their long-term perspective on wellness has caused their trend to bend downward. And you'll often hear that term, bend the trend down, is one of the main goals of wellness clinics, to get that change to be occurring in the future. But Connie, I've had a difficult time trying to identify how do you capture that? Claims that aren't going to happen because of this individual medical attention cause someone to change their, what they were doing with their health care.
Specifically to your question about staff that live in the district or don't, I don't have this number off the top of my head, but what I do know, Mark, is that I have heard from staff members who don't live in Waunakee that they are coming here and they're bringing their kids here
Okay.
because it is so much easier to get in much more quickly and they're not paying their copay. So I think it would be difficult for us to draw conclusions based solely upon where people live.
I would just say I'm looking forward to serving on that committee, and I realize I have a lot to learn. I really want to approach it with an open mind, but my whole tactic is probably what we don't know is way bigger than what we do know. It's gonna take a lot of communication, and I'm especially looking forward to getting more feedback from staff, because unless we can make that a better dialogue for what's working, it's nice to have those high satisfaction survey results, but what are the barriers and how can we make it? It's only a benefit to them, regardless of this high cost, if they're actually using it. So I look forward to learning more. I still have a lot of questions.
Be careful what you're looking forward to. There's going to be a lot of meetings this year.
Any other comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you for
That
taking
was
that time.
very
Yeah.
informative.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, board business?
I think the only thing we had in board business, we have an attachment there, that was with regards to the meeting that I think Dave was speaking to.
Yeah, and there's three individuals who are on the, who have submitted their information and are considered candidates for the Region 12 WISBA representative. And their bios are in our packets. Basically what'll happen when we go to that meeting is one person will we get one vote for our district. So I don't know who is gonna be going to the meeting, but I'll figure that out. It's actually October 4th. I've signed up.
I have
Yeah, I
indicated
think
interest.
I
is
would
that the one
like
you
to
just signed
go.
up? Oh, okay, John too.
Add me.
Is that the one at the Sheraton?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I think
I
there'll
think
be
it's you already.
5 of you.
You have my name down, don't you?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, so what has happened at that meeting, at least in the past, is those individuals have introduced themselves, made, a brief presentation in addition to what you see in your packet, and then, there will be a vote, and each district present has one vote, so you can talk, I guess, around the table, and figure out how you want to handle it.
Thank you. Future agendas and meetings.
All right, we have a few things just to keep on our mind. We're sitting here in September, so next month we have our annual meeting. So I first of all, I'm gonna go backwards here. I'm gonna look at a few dates in October, then I'll come back to a few things in September. Annual meeting is on the 16th. What we need to do is also schedule a special board meeting in order to set the budget. So we're looking at that on Monday the 30th. And we can be flexible with time, so then that can be earlier. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 7 o'clock meeting.
I will be out of town.
The 30th? Are you going that week? Or
I'm
just-
gone the whole previous week,
Right.
and I won't be back yet on Monday.
Okay. 'Cause what we would do on that day is two different things. The annual meeting's on the 16th. What we then do is we're planning to have a budget meeting and an HR meeting before that, in the weeks before that, to really finalize what the actuals are for the budget so that we can approve that on the 30th. We would also then do a preview of what our salary recommendations would be that we would then act on at the November meeting. So HR and budget would hear those the previous week, full board would hear that on the 30th. I guess we have to decide if we want to
You're on
look for
HR,
a
right?
different date. 'Cause I do need to have that by the 1st, right, Steve? Because we need to set the levy by law by the 1st.
So I'm gone the entire week of the 23rd.
Okay.
Yes.
I
I'm going then too, actually.
and same week.
Are you gone the whole previous week too?
23rd to the, yep.
Are you going with Julie?
What's the cruise line?
So it looks like the week of the 16th.
Week of the 16th, can we meet that week?
Yeah, but you gotta have a budget and an HR meeting in between those two.
So the challenge with the timing is the DPI will not release equalization aid until the 15th, which is the day before the annual meeting. So the documents won't be ready, which doesn't probably make for a quality meeting, because you wouldn't really be able to look at it, since it's just coming out that day. And so I'm trying to think of the timing with how we could figure that out. It could be possible later the week of the 16th. As board members, you would just have to know you'd probably be getting the materials at the meeting, which maybe wouldn't be ideal either.
So what that would look like was that would be the actual, what we traditionally do is have the annual meeting, then we have a budget meeting and an HR meeting to kind of review both the actual numbers for the budget and then the projections of what we're recommending for our salary increase. And then what we would then do was have the budget finalized and approved by the board at that special meeting. Again, a precursor to the salary pieces for everybody, then we vote on that in November. So if we're gonna move that back to the 19th, as Steve would say, we would be presenting our budget information to you really at the table. It's probably not gonna change drastically from what you're seeing. The annual meeting is all based on your projections that you've already seen. The actual pieces is where we actually get the equalized data and we dump in the actual numbers. So then you will see that.
So
So
if-
They usually shift a bit, but we could do that potentially that
If
way.
we did those committee meetings though, sometime the week of the 16th, later in the week, I mean, I would have opportunity to give input at that point, so we don't need 100% attendance at the meeting to approve the final budget.
We just need.
Why not just have the committee meetings and the special board meeting at the same time?
Well,
What is
that-
it you're gonna present to the committee that they're gonna do some action on that you would change before the board meeting? I'm saying why bother with the committees? Do you really change anything between the two?
What's that?
I mean, if it matters for HR, if we're looking at the 30th.
We're looking at the 19th right now.
Oh, the 19th? Oh.
Well, what I'm wondering is, do you think you have, this is really a Steve question, do you have time between getting the info on the 15th, annual meeting on the 16th to pull it together by the 19th?
I could try to do that, yeah. I mean, the meeting could be held, it's just how much time would you have to look at the materials before then? I mean, the agenda could be posted.
If the expectation was we could bring the budget information that night,
Then I could do it.
then we could do it. I guess that's
Because we were gonna meet sometime the week of the 23rd, which meant I would have had to have it ready by the 19th or 20th
so that is
anyways.
one option, is we bring it to the table on the 19th, everybody's around the table, you all see it together, you can then make a decision at that point. The other option, I think, is what Julie was saying, was we could have HR and budget on the 19th, and then if we held our meeting, either we're during the week of the 23rd or 30th, as we were normally planning to, we don't have everybody there to see it. But between budget and HR, Gary and Julie would both have an opportunity to look at it. So it's kind of whichever flavor you'd rather have.
And it would give the rest of the board more time to assimilate the information and make questions, rather than having it all dumped at once.
I just don't understand why haven't presented twice to two different.
Well, because you would have the benefit of being able to review it
But
before
you
you're
don't, and
actually
Gary doesn't
approving
anymore.
it.
It's the same presentation. I mean, all I'm gonna do is go in and read the agenda from the budget meeting anyway. And then he's gonna have to say it all twice.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree
it doesn't
with
matter
you.
to me if,
It's really whatever your preference is.
What if you don't agree on it?
Then I wouldn't agree with it on the 23rd either, and then.
Well, you have
nothing
time
to
though
convince me.
to change it by the 30th. If you don't agree before that, you have discussions and time to do something.
But then you wouldn't have time to hear what I said and talk me out of it like you usually do.
So Gary, are you around on the 30th?
I don't think I would.
Are you around on the 30th?
Yes.
You are. So is everybody available besides Julie on the 30th?
Because one thing that we've done in the past is we have scheduled a lot. Maybe we can get it all accomplished on the 19th, but if not, then you still have the other meeting on the 30th.
Oh, we've done that
scheduled just
before.
in case.
That's true.
You know, you basically schedule 2 meetings, but the second one might not be necessary.
That's true.
I mean, that's another option.
Well, there's the 31st also. Are you back then?
It's Halloween.
We did.
You're gonna come dressed up, that might be worth it. Let's do it on
We
Halloween.
did
When do they
Halloween
have it
last
in the school? I mean, is that like the day that all the students? Yeah.
So it's a road trip I'm doing, which theoretically I could buy a one-way ticket back anytime I wanted to buy a one-way ticket back. But I don't think for one person.
I like having a meeting on the 19th and the 30th. If there's something bad on the 19th, if we want see something different, you have the second meeting. If nothing happens and we approve it on the 19th.
Can you just cancel the third?
You cancel the meeting.
Well, we have, you talking about a whole board meeting on the 19th?
Yeah.
So
I thought
we're
you were
gonna
doing
do
meetings.
HR and budget, we're gonna do the whole review of everybody on the 19th.
So what we would do on the 19th is you're gonna have the annual meeting on the 16th where you're gonna get the big picture of what we present there. On the 19th, when we come together, we're gonna put in the actual numbers.
And
Because
that'll
right
be the
now, because
special
the
meeting.
annual meeting is built off of projections. So the actuals, Steve will pull together, bring them to the meeting on the 19th for and our recommendation will be for an action item that night. If you're not comfortable with that, or there's something you wanna change, then we have another date scheduled on the 30th for us to have that action. The other thing that would come on the 19th, I think, was we could present then the projections of where we are with salary increases. No vote on that night, that's just information only, and then that would be acted upon at the November board meeting. Does that seem fair?
That sounds great.
What time?
Which time would you like? I know we have.
We're trying Thursday
So
night.
I need 2 days, so if we have the 19th and the 30th, I just need a time for nobody.
Earliest I can do is 4.
Later on the 19th.
Anything after that.
Later.
Later than what?
After 5.
5:30? On the 19th?
That works for me.
5:30.
Gary, does that work for you?
Sure.
5:30? And then what time on the 30th? Same time?
Same time.
And our hope is that we don't need to have the 30th, we can just cancel it. So those are 2 special meetings.
So do we need to vote on those?
Yes, we do.
I would move that we have a special meeting on Thursday, October 19th at 5:30, as well as, if necessary, Monday, October 30th at 5:30 for purposes of final.
Second.
Do you have to have time on the 30th if you're setting this?
I said 5:30 as well.
Oh, okay.
So Peggy, second by Mark, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Well, you're on record today. You wanna be on
Oh, that's
record?
only if you want to do it by
No, that's fine.
number.
Looking at other items, now I'm gonna jump back to September, there's a few things that we may want to take a look at. The goals committee, Peggy, do you want to pull a goals, and I'm thinking about, with regards to, if we're gonna do any sort of a linkage meeting this fall, we should start thinking about what we would want to do.
Well, I thought we were gonna be doing something with the high school group.
Yeah, with
That's
the
what I thought,
justice
right.
league.
So,
Okay.
do we wanna have a meeting to talk about what we wanna be
Okay,
doing there, and
sounds
I
good.
can see if I can invite Larry in.
Okay,
Would that work?
sure.
So I guess I'm looking at sometime before the October meeting. So, I know Joan, you're gone through,
I'm back on the 25th.
so,
25th of September.
so how about on the 8th or the following, or the first week in October? Preference?
28th works for me. Wouldn't that be
meeting.
better to schedule a time when you're married and just like to
I will, what I'll do is if we can set the date, and then I will contact him,
Okay.
see if that works.
I'm not opposed.
We got Peggy, Joan,
Yeah,
and
it's Mark and.
I prefer closer to 5 than
5 o'clock.
mid-afternoon.
Okay.
So, okay,
5 o'clock.
so 5 o'clock on the 28th.
All right, let me
Or
set this.
later, I mean, it can go later, it's just.
And I believe, Tim, we already have a curriculum meeting set for the,
We need to set it.
you need to set it yet? All
I
right.
can tell you his
The
wish.
20th at 3:30.
What's that?
It's Wednesday the 20th at 3:30.
Okay.
Like it's been September.
Mhm.
I won't be wrong.
Is that good with the curriculum committee? No. Okay.
Well, so,
Okay.
Yeah, will be.
Why don't you come on up?
I can do the 19th, but not the 20th.
So I think, so this is the meeting where we were going to try to get the committee into the Innovation Center to meet with Jeff and Kayla. I know the 20th works there, but I don't have other dates. So maybe we want to go ahead and have the meeting on the 19th with some general topics and move the Innovation Center meeting into October at a time that all three of you can be there. Because I'd really hate to do that meeting and just have a short committee.
That's fine. 19th, 3:30.
So the
Yeah.
19th,
The 19th,
I cannot be there before 4:30.
okay.
So now we're moving it? No.
Well, I think we can, if we do it then, we can do it at 4:30. We could do a later start. I don't have, the real staff we were gonna work with was Jeff and Kayla. So if we move that out, we can go later, if that works for the three of you on the 19th.
Sure.
Now, I heard some of the conversation about trying to schedule the budget meetings. So if I'm bringing dates to Jeff and Kayla for October, what weeks do I want to stay away from?
I'm gone the entire week of October 23rd.
So, the end of October, the last week plus the week of Halloween are out. The 19th is out.
16th.
So is Wednesday, is one of those Wednesdays in October, are those the days?
Wednesdays work well, but they're not the only night we could do it. Just in terms of timing and days of the week, if we were to look at the week of the 16th, what afternoons look good for all three of you?
Tuesday and Thursday would be tough for me.
So
Wednesday, the 18th could work though.
and probably Monday the 17th. Monday the 17th.
As long
Monday's
as it
the
doesn't
16th.
interfere with
Monday
We have the
the
annual
annual
meeting.
meeting.
And that's the annual meeting.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But the 18th.
we could do it if it was earlier.
Right.
So Monday the 16th could work in the afternoon after school.
Yep.
Tuesday the 17th? No.
No. the
Wednesday,
18th would
Wednesday
work.
the 18th.
That would be my best day.
Okay,
So
let
Monday
me,
and Wednesday. Monday and Wednesday.
okay, so let me take that back to Jeff and Kayla,
Yep.
and then we can make that a
Okay.
piece of our meeting on this coming Tuesday. Thanks for your patience with that.
Given what I just learned about dates, I think that'll.
Can I just make one additional comment about dates? If there are any board members who would like to meet the potential artist for the sculpture that Nick Mishler has been working on, he is offering lunch from 12:30 to 1:45. Tomorrow is the more local artist from Madison, and next week, Monday and Tuesday, we have artists from Florida and California, I believe, coming in. And he has contacted me. I'm out of town that whole time. Peggy is going to attend a couple of them. Julie is going to fill in tomorrow. But if anybody, any other board members want to meet the artist,
Where is lunch?
Potential artist.
Rex, potential artist.
So it's tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday?
And you can come to all of them.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
I believe Nick wants to know a head count, though.
Yes, he does, and I said that I would let him know, or if Rebecca, you
Yeah,
would call
yeah,
him and let
if
him
you
know.
can't decide right now, if you wanna let me know, I can be in contact with him.
Tomorrow's the first one, and then next Monday, and next Tuesday are the next two.
I have Monday and Tuesday, because I'm not on so for your information.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so, are we done? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Before everybody scatters, I just wanted to let you know that this is my last week at the Tribune, so this will be my last meeting. It was wonderful working with you all. I really enjoyed it. So, thanks for all your help.
Plaque on the back.
Where are you going?
I'm gonna go work at Great Lakes Student Loan Processing.
Oh,
So,
excited about that?
yeah, very excited.
Okay, well, good.
So,
Well,
yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So Pete's gonna be writing loans.
Yeah,
Instead
yeah.
of writing
Well,
articles,
I'll still be
writing
doing
loans.
some writing, but it'll be probably be different.
You're gonna have to go talk to Scott Ross then.
Did I read
He's
that?
got something to say to you about students.
Oh, okay. All
You
right.
haven't seen one of Scott's now. Big thing they've been
Was he
putting
at
about
Well,
finances.
yeah, he did.
Oh, yeah.
Something's going on. I hope not.